Today, I'm going to share 5 things about asparagus that you may not have known, including when to harvest and when it's the most edible, winter protection for the plant, its invasiveness, its additional use as a privacy hedge, and also what in the world these red berries are. Believe it or not, this is asparagus. I'll show you something that might look a little bit more familiar down here. These are the asparagus spears. But asparagus is best harvested when it's about 6 inches tall and the spears are just starting to come out of the ground and probably no more than about a foot tall. However, the entire plant, except for these berries, are still edible at this point when it gets to this size. Not technically a fern, but it does fern out and it gets to this big, bushy, fern-looking plant. But it's in the lily family. So I'm gonna do a taste test and show you exactly how edible. If we pick off one of these end little tips here, you can see it's got all those little asparagus leaves. Let's take it and see how edible. First, I'll try this woody part at the very end, which I've heard is not very good. It's pretty tough, very fibrous. It's kind of gross. It's not very good to eat. Now, this is the part that I've heard is the best to eat. If you take one of these and you pop off the little leaves, you can take those and eat them. Those are a lot better. Maybe like a very mild asparagus taste. Not very strong at all. Kind of like the consistency of dill. These could be used in anything from if you're cooking potatoes or if you just want to add a garnish, if you want to chop it up and cook it into something. This is a way that you can still use a good portion of this plant when most people don't eat it at all at this point. I'm gonna do a taste test of one of the asparagus stalks that has already ferned out and is probably not good at all. But let's go down here and I'll select one of these and I'm just gonna take the scissors and try to snip at the base. Probably would be good to have something a little stronger than this, but here we go. There we go. Got this one out. And this, let me pull this out of here. This is obviously a really long, ferned out asparagus. It's maybe 5-6 feet tall. But let's look at the very end of it, the part where I cut it. It looks similar in diameter to a normal asparagus spear. But at this point, I don't think it's gonna be very good at all. I will cut a piece off and try it. So here we have our asparagus and I'm just gonna show you what that looks like. Does not look very appetizing, but let's give it a try. It actually, surprisingly, the flavor, it's still pretty sweet. That actually surprised me. It's pretty tough and fibrous and it's just not easy to chew. And even if you cooked it, I think it would just be way too tough to eat. There may be some other uses that I don't know about, but it's very interesting. The inner core is actually pretty sweet. Now, I did see a little spear that was just a few inches long down there, and that's the time where they're supposed to be the best to eat. You're supposed to harvest those in spring, and by this time, you might not get many spears at all, but I am gonna get one of those and see how it tastes at this point in the fall, just to give you some additional perspective. So let's go down and grab this little spear. And I'll come back up here and let's take a look. Here is a tiny little spear, just a few inches long. And at this point, this is supposed to be the ideal harvest time. I don't think it has many bugs on it or anything, but I'm gonna give it a try. I just broke off the part that was near the ground there and I'm gonna give it a taste. That is way more tender. That's pretty good actually. That's way more tender than the stockier piece I just tried. That's not bad. I like that. It's actually not as sweet, surprisingly. It's a little bit more bitter, not in a bad way, just in the way that asparagus tastes. It's not as sweet as that large piece that I just cut out of the ground that was really woody and not a good consistency. Now let's get down in here so we can take just a little closer look at these berries right here. The berries of asparagus are not edible. I repeat that, not edible. They are a little bit toxic and they could give you some digestive issues, a little stomach ache. But if I pick these off, let me get the one that's right out in front there. If I pick that berry, I'll show you what it is. It's actually not a berry at all. It's just a seed casing and it holds the seeds of the asparagus. Let me open that up so you can see what's in there. Those are the little seeds inside of the seed casing. And asparagus female plants are the only ones that produce these little berries. This one has 3 seeds in it. I just dropped one, but there's two of them right there. The heirloom varieties of asparagus have both male and female plants, and the females produce these seeds, but newer hybrid versions of the plant have only male varieties because the male are about 2 to 3 times as productive as the female plants. So if you want something where you can plant seeds, you're gonna need to get an heirloom variety that has both male and female plants and produces the seeds. Asparagus can be planted from these seeds and it can live up to sometimes 50 years, which is pretty wild. It is a perennial plant, which means you plant it once and it comes back year after year. And it's pretty aggressive, a little bit invasive, which I'll get into later, but it's a great option for those looking for a plant that you just plant once. It's pretty low maintenance. People typically harvest the spears in year 2 and 3. Year 1, you usually leave those, but it's kind of up to your discretion. Maybe you can harvest some in year 2 and leave a few to fern out. Asparagus can also be harvested from the crowns, which is basically just the roots of the plant. You can separate them out and plant them in a new location where you want them. To show you what that looks like, I'm gonna dig one up today. Oh wow, oh wow. These roots are a lot deeper than I thought they were. Oh wow, this is interesting. Okay, so here's what I got. You can see the main spears here going all the way down to the roots. These are the trailing roots at the very bottom of the plant, and these grow kind of like an orchid. They set out like a new bud on each one of these as it goes. So you can see where the main spears are here, and then this is a new little spear starting to come up, and there's another one right there. Those are 2 little spears. That's what they look like when they're first forming, and what it will do is just continue to push up out of the ground. It looks kind of comical. They almost look like you just place them there right in the dirt, but they just push right up out of the ground and look like a piece of asparagus that you would get at the grocery store or something. Get a better look at that. This crown brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is the invasiveness of asparagus. Because asparagus can spread through the crowns, it's considered invasive, especially in areas that are very warm and wet, warm areas of California, Texas, Florida, Hawaii. So you might just want to look into that and maybe reconsider if you're in one of those areas where it can spread like crazy, like wildfire. Because it's invasive and can spread on its own, in your home garden, you might want to consider something like a border of some kind, or putting it right up to a lawn too. That will prevent it from spreading. Maybe not put it in an area where there's some really nice fertile soil on the other side of whatever you're trying to keep it out of, because it'll probably spread in that direction. But even if you do that, the seeds can be spread by the birds. So if you don't want that to happen at all, remember to get a hybrid only male variety that does not have the seeds whatsoever and is also more productive. For overwintering asparagus, you don't actually have to cut it back at the base of the plant in winter. A lot of people do, and if you do, it'll probably put more energy down into the roots right before you get a really hard cold winter. I personally do not cut it back just because it's easier and it still produces a good amount of asparagus for me to harvest. Asparagus can grow in zones 3 through 10, which means that it can survive potentially down to -40 degrees. I am in zone 6A and it does really well here. But if you're in a zone that's really, really cold and you get some snow, even in my zone, then it would be a good idea to leave these ferns on, because what will happen is the snow will fall on the ferns and then it will protect this whole area and keep it a lot warmer for your asparagus. You can also mulch the beds if you'd like to do that, if you get a really extreme winter. I personally don't do any of that. I actually do nothing for my asparagus and it still produces quite a lot, and it's a very low maintenance plant for me. Using asparagus as a privacy hedge can be a great idea. You can see behind me, this is just the top of my neighbor's roof. And if I go over here and show you these asparagus plants, I'll stand right next to them. I almost fell. You can see they are taller than me. I'm like 5'6", not very tall, but these are 6 feet probably at least. Again, I'll show you what the view looks like. This is blocking my neighbor's backyard. It's on the edge of my garden. It's providing a really nice, natural privacy hedge that is also edible. It's serving multiple purposes. I'm gonna take you to the other side of the asparagus patch and show you just how good it's blocking out my neighbors. Hope you found this informative, and if you did, I think you know what to do. Here's the view facing my neighbor's house on my side of the asparagus patch, and now let's just move over to the other side and show you how big of a difference that makes. This would be my view if I didn't have the asparagus here. So this asparagus is acting as an amazing privacy hedge for the edge of my garden. And check out that garden. It is looking pretty good.